I'm quarantined here in New York City, so I don't see much outside of my apartment, but I decided that I've made enough trips to the grocery store to collect my observations in a video. I repeat, these are my personal observations. By no means this is New York City during the lockdown. I live in Manhattan, specifically Lower Manhattan, specifically East Village, and I haven't been outside of the East Village since the start of the lockdown. Also, I haven't been out enough to have seen every hour of the day, every day of the week. So this is just supposed to be like a fun video. Please take it with a pinch of salt. Hey, I'm Mary Jane, and here are 10 things that have changed in New York during the lockdown and 5 things that haven't changed. I will try to start from the most obvious ones. First one being that there are no people around. You don't see as many people on the streets. Manhattan is quite unrecognizable at the moment, and most of the people who are walking on the streets are wearing a mask, which is obviously not normal. And I'm sure that you're wondering how people are behaving with the self-isolation rules. And I must say they are being very respectful of the self-isolation rules, like stay 6 feet apart. When you walk down the street and you're about to cross a person, that person will move like 1 or 2 meters to its side to give you enough space. I don't know if you've ever had the chance to see New York during a Thanksgiving Day. I've had this chance twice, and let's say that now New York is pretty similar to a Thanksgiving Day, except that there is not even the car traffic. The biggest downside of this situation in this list of things is probably the fact that all the energy of New York, the famous energy of New York, is gone. There is not that vibe of, I don't know, it's lacking its energy because there are no people on the streets, so the energy is gone. And it's a pity, especially in this time of the year, because exactly the moment where spring is starting to bloom outside, and we are missing that completely. Spring is, I've said it in my video about seasons in New York, spring is the season with the most of the energy because people come out of this winter period and they see the sun for the first time, the warmth, they can wear short clothes, and they just go outside as soon as they can and enjoy these first days of spring, and we are completely missing that this year. Okay, now that I told you the worst aspect of this lockdown, I'm gonna tell you the best one, which is, in my opinion, of course, the noise is gone. One of the things that I've said in other videos is that it took me a while to understand that in New York, especially in Manhattan, there is a constant background noise wherever you are, like either in the streets or in the apartments. And sometimes it's more evident. For example, if you are on an avenue or you are in your apartment but it's facing the street, sometimes it's less evident. I used to stay in an apartment that was inside the block, so I thought it was super calm, super quiet. But then after 4 months of staying there, I went back to visit my family in Italy in the countryside, and I remember clearly the first day I would feel this weird sensation to my ears. And after a few hours, I discovered that it was just the sensation of the silence, of the lack of this constant background noise. Well, now, during this lockdown, or thanks to this lockdown, that background noise is gone completely. And sometimes, especially in the evenings, I like to sit down on the couch, open all the windows, and just hear the silence outside on the streets. It's amazing, for me at least. Now almost all the businesses have closed, so it's really impressive, especially if you walk down an avenue or a street where there are usually a lot of businesses going on. It's really impressive to see that everything is closed, everything is shut down, and Usually these businesses have, like a white piece of paper on the glass door to give some information about their closure. That is pretty sad to see, I must admit. Next thing is that I don't know if this is 100% sure. You let me know in the comments if you live in Manhattan at the moment, if you notice the same thing. But what I personally noticed is that it looks like there is less garbage on the streets, meaning the bags of garbage that businesses and landlords leave outside on the sidewalks and then the truck picks it up. I'm seeing less of this. I guess it's especially because of so many businesses are closed, especially restaurants. Those are usually the ones that create those huge mountains of garbage on the sidewalks in the evening. But I see more random pieces of garbage on the sidewalks and on the streets, and sometimes weird ones like this mask that I found this morning. But that, I think it makes sense. Probably not as many people are working now to clean the streets.
Hi guys, this is Editing Mary Jane, 2 days after shooting this video, and yesterday I had a chance to go out, so I paid more attention to this aspect, and not only I'm able to confirm you that there is so much garbage just scattered around the sidewalks and the street, but I also have the proofs which you are seeing right now. And apparently the problem is that the street cleaning that usually happens twice a week is momentarily suspended. So this is the result. I think that after this lockdown we will be able to appreciate way more the very efficient system of street cleaning in New York City.
I don't see any skateboards anymore. Usually in Manhattan you see these kids or grown-ups going around with skateboards all the time. I don't see them anymore. As well as I don't see another typical thing in Manhattan, which is people walking around with a to-go cup of coffee. That's the typical image of New York or the United States. I don't know, I'm Italian. We don't take coffee to go or any beverage to go. So that is for me a very iconic image, and I don't see anyone taking coffee to go now. Maybe they are all drinking coffee at home. I don't know. Next thing I noticed, it's a pretty delicate thing, and it's about homeless people. I don't see many homeless people around anymore. I've walked several times through Tompkins Square Park here in the East Village, and usually that's filled with people who clearly don't have a home, especially in the early morning when they just open the park. And I often go to take a walk in the early morning when there is not people around yet. And you see these benches are usually filled with homelesses. That's the spot for homelesses in this village. And since the lockdown, I've always seen them empty. So I don't know where they are. I don't know if they have shelters. I don't know if someone is taking care of them. I wish I could know. If you have any information about them, please let me know in the comments. And talking about the park, specifically Tompkins Square Park, because that's the only park that I'm going to, I've seen so many animals, specifically squirrels and birds, which is what you usually see in Tompkins Square Park, but probably because there are no people around right now, animals are kind of taking over the place. So you see them everywhere on the streets, on the trees, on the lawns. I don't know, it feels like they are many more than usual, or they are more active, I don't know. But I've read that in Italy specifically, where the quarantine has been going on for several weeks now, wild animals are taking over the places that are usually occupied by human beings, and now they are not anymore. So for example, they have seen dolphins in harbors and deers near the houses and stuff like that. So this is pretty interesting phenomenon. And 10, I want to end up this list of things that have changed with the lockdown on a note that is very positive. Actually, it's one of the best things of this situation, which is the air quality. And I've always said that in New York City, despite it being such a big metropolis, the air is still pretty clean. I've lived in several other cities, smaller and bigger, before, and even in smaller cities, I've always found that the air was pretty dirty, polluted. But in New York, because there are no mountains around that block the air and it is on the ocean basically, there is always this constant wind, sometimes stronger, sometimes softer, but it's always a constant wind that kind of cleans up the air. So I always thought that the air in New York, relatively to the dimension of the city, is very, very clean. But in these past few days, I've realized that I go outside, I breathe, and it feels like being back home in Italy in the countryside or even in the mountains. One morning I went out, it was early in the morning, between 6 and 7, and I think it had rained during the night. And I breathed in this air and I felt inside of me like I was on the Alps. That was such a strange sensation, honestly, but I think it's an awesome consequence of this lockdown. So let's try to look at the glass half full, right? Okay, now quickly just a few things, 5 to be precise, that haven't changed at all. I thought about including them because it's interesting to know. First of all, the most evident one, people keep running. And that's obvious, I know, because gyms are closed. And well, if you don't know New York, you must know that people here tend to be very, very active, sporty. New York for me is the city of gyms. It feels like everyone is going to the gym in this city. And not only to the gym, because if you go take a walk in any park, you will see hundreds of people running, especially after office hours. And this hasn't changed at all. Obviously, all the people who used to go to the gym after work, now they have to exercise outside because the gyms are closed. So you see a lot of people running, especially now they are more evident than ever because there are not many people just walking on the streets. And there are probably more people who just run because they cannot go to the gym. So yeah, people running everywhere. Second thing is people with dogs. Another characteristic of New York City, for me, in my opinion, is that everyone here has a dog. And aside of the fact that I find it crazy because these poor dogs are forced to stay in shoebox apartments, you will always see people going out of a building with the dog because the dog needs to pee and to poop. And that obviously hasn't changed. And as for the runners, there are not many people around now doing anything else. Now people with dogs are very evident, especially, I mean, me from my building, I always see the same people going out of the building from the window because they are the ones who have dogs. People cycling! That's another thing that hasn't changed, and on the contrary, it has probably increased. One, because spring is coming, and second, because people tend to bicycle more because they cannot take the subway or Uber, and you know, it's safer than biking because you go faster, there is air change and all the stuff. So there's plenty of bicycle around, and also those scooters things. Unfortunately, another thing that hasn't changed is those guys in cool cars going around with super loud music. I don't know what they do. Anyway, usually there is a lot of traffic in Manhattan, so they kind of get confused into the traffic. Even if they are coming with this loud music, you have to turn and look what's going on. But now it's even more evident because there is no one on the street. So when they pass, it's just them. And it's so silent outside that if they pass with the music fills up all the air. Last thing that hasn't changed, and I'm sorry to end this video on a sad note, is that whenever there is one of those beautiful first warm spring days, all the people go to the park. and it was true last year's and it's true this year. Even with the lockdown, obviously people are more careful, they try to self-distantiate, but I mean, there is a limit to self-isolation if so many people go to the park to hang out because the sun is out. So yeah, unfortunately, people are still going to the parks, and I'm always happy when I wake up in the morning and I see that it's a rainy day or a cloudy day, because it means that it's gonna be easier for us and for everyone to stay at home and self-isolate, because when the sun is shining with these first warm days of spring, it's really, really difficult. If you live in New York, or even better in Manhattan, and you are quarantined here right now, please let us know your experience in the comments. Also, I'm super curious to know if these things are things that I noticed or they are in the entire Manhattan or even New York. Remember, please, to take this video with a pinch of salt, because those are my very, very personal and limited observations. I cannot go out of this village, so this is what I can give you. Last thing, I want to address the many comments that I got in my situation in Italy video, where many people asked me to do the same report kind of job with the spread of the virus in New York City. I cannot really do that because I haven't read enough news, and I keep not reading the news here, and I don't see what's happening outside because I don't meet up with people, so I don't talk with anyone. Despite the fact that I haven't personally experienced the outbreak in Italy, I was able, through the news and through my channel of information that I trust since years, and through the direct experience of my family, I was able to compose the pieces of the puzzle and give you a trustable scenario, but I don't feel confident enough to do the same for New York City. I don't know if I'm gonna do maybe a mini report with the very limited information that I have, but I cannot promise anything. Thank you for the attention. Goodbye from Mary Jane.